Great. This is Pablo Oliver, who consented to have an interview with me as a cartographer for Dialexicon. I was in a space of curiosity around how the lines that we see on a globe, the longitudinal and latitudinal lines that go right down to to very, very specific spots. My daughter's geocaching now, so she's finding these very, very specific spots. And I know we can do it with a phone and just say, tell me my longitude and latitude, but these coordinates have existed for a long time, and how what are longitude and latitude, and how do you figure that out? How are you sure where they are exactly?
Yeah, so I mean, it depends on a lot of things. It depends on what system you want to use. There's tons of different systems out there. The most common being UTM, which was created by the Europeans wanting to sail around the world. The UTM coordinate system was created by this guy named Mercator, who was, I forget what year he was active, but it was revolutionary at the time, in that before that they would just go by the stars. So his idea was to set up a grid system so that you could, using the stars still, kind of tell where in the world you are. And it's really just, north-south lines and east-west lines. Using the system, they were able to go right across the Pacific Ocean, which is pretty incredible, I think. Yeah. Sorry, I'm at a loss for words.
Is that part of what first intrigued you about geography and cartography? Or what aspect of it?
No. For me personally, it was wanting to travel. And with travel comes, having to know where you are, especially biking around. We used to do a lot of cycle touring when I was younger, and we would always stop off at gas stations and get local maps depending on where we were. You'd be able to plan kind of on the fly where you were going to sleep that night. And obviously, the more detail that these maps came with, the better you were able to plan your route and your whole trip. So that's where my love of maps came from. It kind of happened organically, in that I fell into it because one of my professors in university was one of the first people who hired me to work on maps. After that, I started surveying, so I was able to see a lot of the country here in Alberta. And I was getting paid for it. So I was getting paid to gather information for people making maps. And eventually I moved into an office setting, and it kind of just progressed from there. I've been doing this for almost 20 years now. Yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
So when you were describing using, local maps, paper maps, and biking, you said that they, you would have more information, the more detail. Could you say more about like what you're talking about maps and being able to be oriented in a new space and, understanding your surroundings and going to new places? In that context, what does detail mean?
Well, in that time, we didn't have phones with Google Maps, with all this information in our pockets. So finding a good map that was at the right scale, that would give you enough detail, wasn't always the easiest thing, especially when you're on the road. When you were on the road back then, most maps that you would pick up at a gas station or whatever, they were meant for cars. They weren't meant for somebody on a bicycle who, an hour's worth of driving is pretty much a day's worth of biking. So you needed to know how to route yourself so that you weren't going up some steep hill, so that you could get to wherever it is that you wanted to end up, the shortest and flattest route possible. If you weren't going to make your campsite, you wanted to know if there were some decently hidden, some woods nearby the road, where you could pitch a tent without anybody noticing. If there were bodies of water that you could stop at and have a picnic along the way. If there were gas stations that you could stop at and grab some water, or if you were really secluded, if there were any houses nearby where you can knock on their door and ask for water. Water is not always easy to come by, and when you're biking, it's something that you constantly need, and it's heavy, so you do want to carry enough, but not too much, because it really does weigh you down.
That's perfect.
Yeah. So yeah, that's where my love of maps came from. It was all around planning and kind of dreaming where you could go, where you could stop along the way just by looking at a piece of paper, knowing that people have been there before, and gathered this information and kind of drew it out for you. I always thought that was pretty cool.